Hi, this is Roger in Finland, and today we're going to take a look at a full review of the Panasonic G9. Some time ago I posted a video giving 10 reasons to buy the Panasonic G9 in 2020. Since people seemed to be interested in the camera, I thought I'd do an in-depth review. We'll take a look at the physical attributes, size, weight, buttons, etc., the screen, we'll talk a little bit about the sensor since some people are allergic to Micro Four Thirds, and then we'll deep dive into the video capabilities, especially with the latest firmware update, audio, and then let's wrap up. And spoiler alert, it's a great camera. For quite some time, I was saying that what is the point of having a mirrorless camera if they aren't small? Fortunately, I have learned something along the way, and size is a matter of taste. I'm not sure if that's what she said. Do you want a small mirrorless Panasonic Micro Four Thirds body? Go with the GM1. Rangefinder style, GX80, small and light DSLR style, G7, G80. But what if you want a big enough camera? What if you want your pinky to fit in the grip? Well, the G9 does that, and very well. With my A6400 I need the bottom part always mounted with the L bracket so I can actually feel the grip. And it was the same story with the A7 III, but not with the G9. It does have a magnesium alloy body, which is weather sealed, and it weighs 658 grams with the battery included. And not only it's splash proof and dust proof, but it's also freeze proof down to minus 10 degrees Celsius. And that, my friends, is relevant living up here in Finland. In the buttons department there's plenty. On the top we find the on-off switch around the shutter button, which is my favorite implementation of an on-off switch. Then a dedicated video record button, and one of the few complaints I have about this camera is that the shutter is actually very sensitive. We do get two scroll wheels which can do a bunch of different things. They can be used, for instance, to change ISO, white balance and exposure compensation by using them in conjunction with the upper dedicated buttons. And you can choose whether you want those buttons to operate when switching them or when holding them. And since there is not a better way, but just our own preferences, isn't it great that we are offered the choice? Still, on the top plate we do have an info screen, which is big, easy to read, and it has plenty of information. To me it reminds me of the DSLR design, or even SLR if we go back to the Nikon F5 and F6. And by closing the back and using only the viewfinder, you can get a little bit of a nostalgic feel. In the middle we have the viewfinder, which is very nice actually, with a magnification of 0.83 and the diopter adjustment. That is the same magnification than the Nikon FM3A, for example, and that was a gorgeous viewfinder. On the left of the screen we do have the double stack dial. On the top bit there are the different modes, and on the lower dial we have the different drive choices, which include the excellent Panasonic 4K or 6K photo modes. The button on top can be used to lock the dial, but you don't need to press it every time if you don't want to. Once again, Panasonic gives us the option to choose. On the back, on the top left, we have the playback button, and next to it, one of the custom buttons that by default it's assigned to the viewfinder mode. Either always off and the screen is on, always on, then the screen is off, or automatically using the sensor right under the viewfinder. On the other side we have a selector to switch between the different focusing modes, manual, single and continuous, with a button in the middle that can be used to lock the exposure or as an AF on button, again customizable at will. We do have the joystick to move the focus point or area around, another function button, a scroll wheel with a middle button to access the menus, a shortcut to the quick menu, and a display button to cycle to the different display modes. Most of them customizable. There's a lot of buttons, seriously, and you can customize plenty of them. And if that wouldn't be enough, on the side of the screen there are soft buttons, as in we have still more accessible options without having to go into the menus, not even into the quick menu. And now that we're done with the buttons, we can check the camera flaps. On the grip we have access to the memory cards, which are two UHS 2 SD card slots. On the left side we find the ports. We have the microphone input, headphones out for monitoring, and that starts to separate the camera from similarly placed competition. USB-B, which is awkward because most of us are heavy lying around USB-C or mini USB, but not USB cables. And it does have a full HDMI port. And I totally agree with the everyday that. Micro HDMI sucks. Full HDMI all the way. Thank you, Panasonic. Then we have the flippy screen. It's pretty nice. It's fully touch enabled. You can use to navigate through all the menus. It is responsive, and because if it's flippable, it means also that it will be protected when putting it in your bag. I personally prefer the flip-ups design of the Sony A64, 61 and 6600, but with the bigger and in the middle viewfinder, I guess it would be more difficult. It would just plain impractical to implement. Anyway, some level of flippiness is always welcome. Then we get to the sensor. Yes, it is a Micro Four Thirds sensor, so if you need or want something bigger, this is not the camera for you. It is a 20 megapixel sensor and does with shooting with an aspect ratio of 4:3. That changes a little bit with other aspect ratios. In 3.2 we get 17 megapixels, and then in 16.9 and 1:1 we get 14.5 megapixels. Still talking about stills, Panasonic offers the 4K and 6K photo modes. Think of it as a 4K or 6K video at 25 frames per second, and then you pick frames as stills. It effectively is a low resolution, but lower than 20 megapixels anyway, but a 25 frames per second burst, more than enough for your social media needs. One of my favorite aspects of this sensor, or the camera actually, is the IBIS, the in-body image stabilization. It's good, it's really good. The claim is 5.5 stops, and I do believe it. And if you pair it with a Panasonic or Panasonic stabilized lenses, it gets even better. If you are a camera conspiracies viewer, you know that the stabilization does wobbly weird stuff in the corners with very wide lenses, but I don't have anything that wide, so not a problem for me. The mount, as I mentioned a couple of times, is micro 4/3, which makes it one of the most versatile out there. The combination of the really short flash distance and the small sensor means that you can adapt most other lenses and other mounts to it. Additionally, there's a great selection of native glass from Panasonic, Olympus, Sigma, Voigtlander, Laowa, or manual chip license from 7 Artisans and others, or these great cinema lenses from Meike. When the G9 was launched in February 2018, 2 years ago, it was clearly the photography focused camera running in parallel with the GH5, the video-centric camera. But now, with the latest firmware, the version 2.0, the G9 is also a video powerhouse. Even without the paid update, it's a powerhouse. If you add Vlog through the paid update, it really becomes comparable with the GH5. Personally, I'm happy now with HLG, so I'm not getting the Vlog update. So what we got is 4K, not DCI but 4K anyway, 60p, 4208 8-bit internal. It's possible to record 422 10-bit externally through Hdmi, and another limitation is that if you want HLG in 4K 60p, it can only be done externally. Internally you get 30, 25 and 24p in 422 10-bit, and you can do HLG. Pretty much each mode has some limitation, whether it's HLG or VFR, but fortunately the menus do explain that very well. In Full HD, we can go up to 180 frames per second in slow motion in 4208 8-bit internally by using VFR. That's variable frame rate, by the way. Of course, shooting in 422 10-bit means a lot of data, up to 150 megabits per second. So if you don't need or you don't want that, or your SD card can't handle, then you can shoot in some of the other formats on all the other options. They go down all the way to about 20 megabits per second. That's going to bring some limitation, but that's a different kind of problem. The HDMI output can be 422 10-bit, but then you cannot record internally. When it comes to codecs and containers, you get H.264 for most of the options, and the containers are MP4 and MOV. The formats being AVC HD, MP4, MP4 HVEC, or AGVC, however that's called, that's for HDR by the way, and MOV. There's plenty of options and I won't go through them all, but if you want 422 10-bit, that will be H.264 and MOV container. Should I do a full video on all the quirks and differences between all the different video modes? Different data rates, different possibilities for VFR or not, same with HLG, and even which formats can be downloaded to your phone, tablet, through the app and which don't. What do you think? As I mentioned before, Vlog L is a paid upgrade which I will not be getting, so the profiles that are more color grading friendly are Cine-like D, Cine-like V and HLG. My personal favorite is HLG in this camera, and also it's my favorite in the Sony cameras. If you want to shoot in HLG, I mentioned that before, I'll repeat it, you'll need to record 422 10-bit in 30 frames per second or less internally. If you want 60p, through HDMI. Funnily enough, Sony allows you to shoot in S-Log 3 even with the a6400, which isn't a great idea since it can only do 420 8-bit internally or 422 8-bit externally. Panasonic is a bit more careful here, limiting the picture profiles depending on your format. I would appreciate a bit more choice, and then if it doesn't work, maybe it's my fault, but I suppose that you can have it all. When it comes to monitoring, you get focus peaking for manual focusing, zebras, and there are actually 2 of them with customizable values in increments of 5%, and histogram. My favorite tool for monitoring exposure is the waveform, which you get in the GH5 in the paid update with Vlog, but you don't get that with the G9, which is a pity. Then we get to the audio. First of all, it does have a 3.5mm input jack and 3.5mm headphone jack for monitoring. Something I appreciate is that you can see the levels in the screen, and it's fairly easy to adjust the gain in the camera, and you can do it between -12 and +6 dBs in 1 dB increments. So what is a summary? Great ergonomics, great customizability and buttons, versatile lens mount, Micro Four Thirds sensor, if you like it or not, excellent video specs and image quality, and very good audio. I would say that for 1K, it is a great choice. If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon for some more content.